I can't afford this place. Get out of my restaurant right now.
Imagine this, your night, a celebration, transformed in an instant into a public spectacle. Your character, your very right to be there, dissected under the harsh, judgmental lights of a dining room. Not by a mistake, but by an assumption, a deep, ugly assumption that wears the mask of policy and procedure. This is the story of a man who confused a throne for a stool, and the quiet couple who owned the restaurant. The Grove was not just a restaurant, it was a monument to a quiet dream. Its owner, Marcus Thorne, believed in the alchemy of dark wood, soft light, and the perfect sear on a scallop. He was a man who spoke in menus and floor plans, who found his voice not in boardrooms, but in the consistent hum of a satisfied kitchen. Tonight, however, he was just a man on a date with his wife, Chantelle. Their anniversary, a corner booth, a rare night off from the gentle tyranny of ownership. Their server, Martin, was a man who wore his apron like a badge of authority. He had a smile for the tables he deemed worthy, a practiced, territorial grin. When he approached Marcus and Chantelle, his eyes performed a quick, unconscious calculus. The elegance of Chantelle's dress against whatever story he told himself about the man beside her. His warmth cooled by several degrees. The service became efficient, brittle. A requested wine recommendation was met with a pointed list of the most expensive bottles. A question about the day's special was answered with a tone that suggested the answer should have been obvious. The unease was a slow creeping vine, a shared glance between husband and wife, a language of raised eyebrows and slight sighs perfected over years. It was in the way Martin's pen hovered over their order with palpable skepticism. It was in the prolonged absence after their meals were served, a deliberate withdrawal. The climax was petty, bureaucratic. When the check was presented, Marcus noticed an error. 2 glasses of premium cognac they had never ordered, nestled among the desserts. Chantelle gestured for Martin. Her voice was polite, reasonable. "Excuse me, there's a mistake on the bill. We didn't have these." Martin's posture shifted. He didn't examine the check, he looked at them, a sigh heavy with the burden of dealing with the inevitable. "The register doesn't lie," he said, his voice just loud enough to be heard by the neighboring table. "The order was entered. It's been consumed."
"But it hasn't," Marcus said, his voice low, a warning rumble. "Take them off, please." This was the trigger. Martin saw not a customer with a valid complaint, but a challenge to his domain. He adopted the loud, performative tone of a man exposing a fraud for the public good. "I want everybody to hear this now," he announced, his voice cutting through the murmur of the dining room. Dozens of faces turned. "This lovely couple has enjoyed a significant meal, and now they seem to have an issue with the bill." Heat flooded Marcus's cheeks. A lifetime of composure strained against a wave of primal humiliation. Chantelle's hand found his under the table, her grip iron. Martin mistook their silent communication for guilt. "I will not be bullied in my own restaurant," declared Martin, puffing out his chest, embracing his role as the defender of the Grove's integrity. "If you cannot pay for what you've consumed, that's one thing, but this, we want you to walk out that door and don't ever come back." The room was a tomb. Every clink of cutlery had stopped. In that silence, Marcus Thorne's entire perspective shattered and reformed. He was no longer a humiliated patron. He was an architect surveying a crumbling structure he'd built with his own hands. The fear, the tension, the psychological pressure, it all evaporated, replaced by a glacial, clarifying calm. He stood, not quickly, but with a profound, weary authority that made Martin take a half step back. Marcus did not look at the server. He looked past him to the archway leading to the kitchens. He raised his hand and gave a slow, deliberate wave. From the kitchen, Elena, the veteran maitre d', emerged. Her eyes scanned the frozen scene, landing on her boss. She understood in an instant. Her professional mask didn't crack, but her spine straightened. She walked over, not to the table, but to stand beside Marcus, facing Martin. "Elena," Marcus said, his voice now carrying effortlessly in the quiet room, "please bring the operational ledger for this section from my office, and the employment file for Martin, please." The name Martin in his mouth was not a name, but a title, a problem to be solved. The color drained from the server's face, his smug certainty replaced by the dawning horror of a catastrophic miscalculation. The abusive power he'd tried to wield was not his. It had never been his. "Sir, Martin stammered.
"You are relieved of your duties for the evening," Marcus said, his tone final. "Elena will escort you to the office to collect your things. Your final check will be mailed. You will not speak to another guest on your way out." The exposure was absolute, and it was silent. There was no triumphant music, no applause, just the harsh, fluorescent truth flooding a space built on shadow and assumption. The diners watched as the man who had pronounced judgment a moment ago became a specter, led away by the stoic maitre d'. The power had not just shifted, it had returned to its rightful source, and in doing so, it rendered the previous performance a pathetic, shameful fiction. Marcus and Chantelle did not stay for a victory lap. He simply nodded to Elena, placed more than enough cash on the table for the correct bill, and guided his wife toward the door. As they passed through the restored murmur of the dining room, they were not scowled at. They were seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time that night. Outside in the cool air, Marcus took a deep breath. The injustice had been checked. The abuser of authority faced immediate professional consequences, loss of power, termination, very likely legal trouble for his defamatory public accusation. But the victory was ash in his mouth. The restaurant was his, but the insult belonged to the man he was before he walked in. Chantelle leaned her head on his shoulder. "We built that place to be a sanctuary," she said softly. "We did," he replied, watching the light from the Grove's windows spill onto the sidewalk. "The question is, for whom?" He knew the work was not over. A single firing was not a solution, it was a correction. True accountability meant looking inward at the culture that allowed a Martin to believe he was king. It meant rebuilding, not just the menu, but the foundation. The quiet couple drove away, owners of the building, the business, the linen, the china. But that night, they were reminded that some things, dignity, respect, the right to simply be, should never be on the bill of sale, and must be claimed, gently and firmly, again and again. In the end, the most powerful ownership is not of a place, but of one's own story, especially in the moment someone else tries and fails to write it for you.